Hello, grade 6, and welcome to your third algebra lesson, Solving Equations. Your learning target for today is, I can undo an operation to solve for a variable. Before we begin an example, I'd like to talk about inverses. Inverse is a fancy way of saying opposites. And when we're working with equations, we will notice that inverses or opposites can undo each other. I think this will make more sense when we start doing examples, but for now, let's note that addition and subtraction are opposites or inverses, and they can cancel each other. Multiplication and division are inverses or opposites, and they cancel one another. All right, let's say we have this equation to solve. X plus 2 equals 7. Our goal is always to get the variable, that's the letter, in this case x, all by itself. So we would like it to be by itself on one side of the equation and everything else on the other side. So right now, plus 2 is in the way of our x. X does not want anything else on its side of the equation, so we need to move everything to the other side. So right now, it says x plus 2. To get rid of that 2, we need to do the inverse or the opposite. Remember, addition and subtraction can undo each other. So, I'm going to rewrite this equation. X plus 2 equals 7. If we do the opposite of plus 2, minus 2, these 2's will cancel each other. A positive 2 and a negative 2. Now we are left with x on this side, the left-hand side of the equation. However, if we take 2 away on the left-hand side, we must do the same thing on the right-hand side. That will keep our equation balanced. So 7 minus 2 is 5. X is equal to 5. Some people like to write all of this in one line. I'm going to show you what that would look like. Let's start with x plus 2 equals 7. You may write minus 2 beside 7 minus 2. Plus 2 and minus 2 cancel each other. We're left with x equals, solve for 7 minus 2, x equals 5. That is the first step. Here you can see it written a little more clearly. You can see that the minus 2 cancels the positive 2. Your second step is to check your answer. So you're going to plug in 5 for x in the original equation. Let's try. If x is equal to 5, does 5 plus 2 equal 7? It sure does. Now we know we have solved for x correctly. This visual may help some of you create a picture in your mind of that last problem. So x plus 2 is represented right here. We don't know what x represents just yet. We see 7 blue balls on this side. If we want to get x by itself, we take away 2 balls from this side of the scale. If we would like to keep that scale balanced or equal, we need to remove 2 balls from the other side. All right, let's try another equation, this time with subtraction. X minus 3 equals 6. Remember, addition and subtraction are inverses. To undo subtraction, we need to use the inverse operation. addition. So x minus 3, the inverse is addition, so let's add 3. If we add 3 to the left-hand side, we must add 3 to the right-hand side. On the left-hand side, minus 3 and plus 3 cancel each other, and we're left with x. 6 plus 3 equals 9. Remember, we can also write this in one line. X minus 3 equals 6. The opposite of negative 3 or minus 3 is plus 3. If we add 3 to one side, we must add 3 to the other side. Minus 3 and plus 3 cancel. We're left with x equals 6 plus 3 or 9. Let's go ahead and check our answer. All right, let's plug in or substitute 9 for x. 9 minus 3 equals 6. Is this correct? It sure is. That means we have correctly solved for x. Let's try an equation with multiplication. Multiplication and division are inverses. You can use one to undo the other. If the equation involves multiplication, you will need to use division to get the variable by itself. Let's say you have to solve the equation below. 3x equals 12. Before we begin, remember, 3x means 3 times x. It can also be written 3 bracket x, 3 star x, 3 dot x, or simply 3 with the letter x right next to it. There are many ways to write multiplication. It's very common to write the letter directly beside the number. Remember, that just means multiplication. All right. If we would like to undo this multiplication 3 times x, we're going to use the inverse, which is division. So we can show this like this. When we draw a line, that means division. Looks a little bit like a fraction. If we divide by 3 on the left-hand side, we must divide by 3 on the right-hand side. That will keep our equation balanced or equal. 3 divided by 3, that equals 1. Those cancel each other out. Now we're left with 1x, or just x. 12 divided by 3 equals 4. Therefore, x equals 4. Our next step is to check our answer. Let's plug in 4 for x. So we can write 3 times 4 equals 12. Is that correct? It sure is. That means we have solved correctly for x. Lastly, let's try an equation with division. To undo division, we need to use multiplication. Let's take a look at a one-step equation with division involved. So first of all, remember, when we see x, a line, and then a 2, that's the same as x divided by 2. So, on the left-hand side of the equation, we have x divided by 2. To undo division, we are going to use multiplication. So, x divided by 2 times 2 equals 5. Now we must do the same thing on the right-hand side as we did to the left-hand side. We multiplied by 2 on this side. We must multiply by 2 on the right-hand side. Now, if we multiply by 2 and divide by 2, remember those are inverses and cancel each other out. We're simply left with x equals 5 times 2 is 10. Let's check our answer. 10 divided by 2 equals 5. Remember, that can also be written in a line like this. 10 divided by 2 equals 5. That is correct. I will also post a YouTube video if you feel like you need a little bit more review. This video will go through some additional examples. Now I would like you to try the seesaw activity called Solving One-Step Equations. You will be presented with a question. The next page will show you the solution to that question. I'd like you to first try by yourself, but if you get stuck, move to the next page to see how to solve that question.